Welcome back to the garage, and if you're new here, buckle up. This is Token Teardown, Dyno-Test Certified, the only show on the internet where we jack crypto projects up on the lift, shine a light underneath, and explain what's actually happening under the hood. Because when a project says it's fast, we don't nod. When it says it's revolutionary, we don't clap. And when it says it's AI powered, we definitely don't get impressed. Why? Because this is the garage. We love AI. We use it, we build with it, we deploy agents. We run workflows most people don't even realize exist yet. So no, AI doesn't impress us by default. A chatbot isn't impressive. A token with AI in the name isn't impressive. A flashy demo with glowing eyes and synth music doesn't move the needle in here. Around this shop, AI has to earn respect. It has to create real economic activity. It has to operate without a human babysitter. And it has to survive after the hype leaves the room. That's the bar. And that's why today's build is interesting. Because the machine rolling into the bay today isn't trying to be a Ferrari. It's not built for noise or flex. This project is closer to a Tesla Model S Plaid with autonomous driving turned on. Not impressive because it's fast, impressive because it's designed to operate on its own. A Plaid reads the environment. It makes decisions. It routes itself. It keeps moving even when your hands aren't on the wheel. That's the ambition here. Today, we're tearing down Virtual's protocol, ticker Virtual. The claim is bold, an on-chain economy for autonomous AI agents, not tools, not assistants, actual entities that earn, spend, and operate independently. The question is simple. Is this a real AI startup factory or just another hype build that looks incredible until you take your hands off the wheel? We don't speculate in this garage. We instrument. We trace execution paths. We read contracts. We follow the transactions. That means repository audits, on-chain flow analysis, and stress testing assumptions against live data, not narratives. And none of that happens without XXX. He's the one holding the flashlight all week, calling GitHub commits, tracking wallet behavior, mapping protocol flows, and checking what the white paper claims against what the chain actually does. So what you're about to hear isn't opinion, it's diagnosis, facts over hype. Data over vibes. Now, before we get under the hood, smash the like, hit the follow, and share this with your fellow degens, especially the ones who never stop talking about AI and robots. You know the ones, crypto curious, convinced this is the cycle, still a little salty because they aped into Doge at 68 cents right before the top. Send it to them. We're not judging, we're diagnosing. All right, clear the lift. Gloves on. Let's tear it down. Before we talk about what this machine does, how autonomous it really is, or whether it earns its keep, we need to talk about who built it. Because in this garage, we don't trust claims. We trust the people holding the wrenches. Virtual's protocol didn't come out of a hackathon. It didn't come out of a meme cycle. And it definitely wasn't slapped together during peak AI hype. This project grew out of a real Web3 operation called PathDAO, a gaming guild that was already live, already managing a treasury, and already coordinating real users long before Virtuals ever existed. That matters, because when you've already run a DAO in the wild, you understand things most projects never learn. You understand how tokenized communities actually behave. You understand treasury pressure. You understand the difference between real users and pure speculation. At the center of that pivot are two names that matter. Jansen Teng, the CEO, and Wiki Teo, the COO. Both are graduates of Imperial College London. Both worked as consultants at Boston Consulting Group. That background shows up immediately in how this project was built. These aren't influencers chasing narratives or hype cycles. They're systems thinkers. People trained to look at incentives, second-order effects, and long-term structure. And when they were running PathDAO, they saw something early. They saw play-to-earn slowing down. They saw guild economics compressing. They saw user growth flattening. But more importantly, they saw the AI wave coming before it was safe to say it out loud. So instead of clinging to a model that was clearly losing momentum, they made a hard call. They shut the hood, they tore the engine out, and they rebuilt the entire platform around a new idea: AI agents as autonomous economic actors. That's not a cosmetic upgrade. That's a full drivetrain swap. And you can see that discipline in how virtuals shipped. There was a clean migration from PathDAO to virtuals. There was a one-to-one transition that respected existing holders. And there was a working product before the narrative hit full mania. No panic launch, no duct tape, no we'll fix it later. Now look at who decided to back this build. The seed round was led by Defiance Capital, a fund known for backing infrastructure, not hype. These are people who expect systems to run under load, not just look good in demos. They also form strategic partnerships with Animoca Brands, a group that understands digital economies and virtual worlds at scale better than almost anyone in this space. That's the equivalent of race engineers looking at telemetry before they sponsor the car. So here's the honest takeaway. This team did not optimize for comfort. They optimized for capability. That means complexity. That means sharp edges. And that means the system assumes builders, not tourists. And once you understand who built this thing and why they built it this way, the next question becomes obvious. What exactly did they build to justify that complexity? And just as important, what did they intentionally leave out? That's the build sheet. Let's pop the hood. All right, let's pop the hood, because this is the part where people either get lost or everything finally clicks. The easiest way to understand virtuals is to think about how we already build workflows in this garage. If you've ever used tools like N8N, Zapier, or any automation stack, you already understand most of what's going on here. You're not building a constantly thinking AI. You're building event-driven workflows. Nothing happens until something triggers it. That's the key. Virtuals works the same way. The difference is that instead of those workflows living inside a Web 2 automation tool, they live on a DeFi native network, and they're paired with two extra things: an AI brain and a wallet. So yes, it does resemble N8N, but it's N8N with money, permissions, and autonomy baked in. Here's how it actually works. At its core, an agent is a workflow. It listens. It waits for triggers. Those triggers can be something simple, like a user sending a message. It can be a payment hitting the agent's wallet. It can be a scheduled timer going off. It can be an on-chain event happening, or it can be a condition being met. Until one of those things happens, the agent is not doing anything. It's not thinking. It's not burning compute. It's not looping in the background. It's waiting. When a trigger fires, that's when the AI comes in. This is where the large language model fits into the picture. And this part is important. The LLM is not the system. The LLM is a tool the workflow calls when reasoning is needed. So instead of a basic rule like, if X happens, send email Y, you now have something more powerful. If X happens, ask the AI how to respond, then decide what to do next. That's the upgrade. The workflow handles the structure. The AI handles the thinking. Now, what AI model is it actually using? Virtuals does not hard lock the system to a single model. That's intentional. Most agents today use commercial large language models, the same class of models people already know and trust. The exact model depends on what the builder chooses. Some builders care about cost. Some care about speed. Some care about quality. Some care about the type of task. So the protocol stays model agnostic. The system doesn't care which model you use. It only cares that the agent can receive input, reason about it, and act within defined permissions. That means the AI brain is swappable. If better models come out, agents can upgrade. If cheaper models work for simpler jobs, builders can switch to those. Now, here's the part that makes this DeFi native. Once the AI produces a decision, the workflow doesn't just send a message or update a spreadsheet. It can execute real on-chain actions. It can charge a user. It can receive payment. It can pay for compute. It can move funds. It can settle a transaction. And it can do that without a human clicking approve, because the agent already has a wallet and predefined permissions. That's the autonomy layer. So here's the clean summary. Virtuals agents are not thinking AIs. They are workflow-driven systems that wait for triggers, wake up when needed, call an AI to reason, execute actions, and then go back to idle. That's why this works economically. No trigger means no cost. No cost means scalability. And scalability is what makes autonomy possible. So if you're already used to building workflows in tools like N8N, you're honestly about 70% of the way there conceptually. The last 30% is simple to say, even if it's powerful. You're adding an AI brain instead of static logic. You're adding a wallet instead of a webhook. And you're letting the workflow settle value on a blockchain instead of a server. That's the leap Virtuals is making. It's not magic. It's not sentience. It's event-driven automation with reasoning and money attached. And once you see it that way, the whole system stops being confusing and starts making sense. Now that the hood is open and you understand how the engine actually runs, the next question is obvious. Who's using this in the real world? And what are they actually building with it? That's where we go next. Now that you understand how the engine works, the next question is the only one that really matters. Is anyone actually using it? Because a self-driving car that never leaves the parking lot is still just a prototype. And before we go any further, let's ground one important thing. Virtuals is not its own blockchain. This is a decentralized application, a dApp, built on top of existing networks, primarily Base, which is an Ethereum layer 2. That means all of this activity, all of these agents, all of these payments are settling on real blockchain infrastructure underneath. Virtuals is the factory. Base and Ethereum are the roads and power grid. That matters because it means this isn't theory. It's running on live rails. And this is where Virtuals starts to separate itself from hype. The people using this system today fall into a few very clear groups, and the best way to understand it is by looking at what they've actually built. One of the most visible examples is Luna. Luna is a virtual AI influencer. She posts content, interacts with fans, responds to messages, and operates continuously across social platforms. People don't just talk to her for novelty. They engage with her like a digital personality. What makes Luna important isn't the avatar or the visuals. It's the economics. When users interact with Luna in premium ways, the agent charges automatically. That payment settles on-chain. It goes straight to the agent's wallet. A trigger fires. The workflow wakes up, the AI responds, the transaction settles on Base, and the system goes back to idle. No human approving payments. No one manually routing revenue. That's a dApp doing exactly what it's supposed to do. Then you've got agents like AIXBT, which sit on the analytical side. These agents monitor crypto markets, social sentiment, and on-chain signals. They're not running constantly, they're listening. When something meaningful happens, they wake up, analyze the situation using an AI model, and produce output. Sometimes that output is public, sometimes it's gated behind payment. Either way, the value exchange is real, and it settles through the same underlying blockchain infrastructure. That's not a chatbot. That's a digital worker operating inside a decentralized system. You also see agents like Vader AI, which push further into DeFi-style behavior. These agents respond directly to on-chain conditions, yield changes, protocol activity, market shifts. They observe, reason, and act automatically, as long as the rules and permissions are defined. They're not perfect, they're not pretending to be, but they prove something important. An AI agent can live inside a decentralized application, use blockchain infrastructure for money, and operate without a human babysitter. Beyond the headline names, there are dozens of quieter agents doing real work. Support-style agents that respond to users and get paid per interaction. Content agents that generate and distribute media when triggered. Utility agents that run scheduled checks, produce reports, and settle payment per task. These don't trend on Twitter. They don't have fan art, but they matter because they prove the same thing from a different angle. This platform isn't one product. It's a factory built on top of real blockchain rails. Different builders are creating different agents for different purposes, all settling value on the same underlying networks. Some succeed, most fail, a few scale. That's not a flaw. That's what early ecosystems look like when the barrier to building is low and the market decides what survives. And this is why virtuals can feel chaotic if you're expecting a polished consumer app. It's not consumer software yet. It's infrastructure, a DApp, being used by builders who are testing what autonomy actually means when money is involved. So when people ask, is this real usage? The honest answer is yes. Not mass adoption, not grandma friendly, but very real. You have software waking up, doing work, getting paid, settling on-chain, and going back to idle without a human in the loop. And once you see that happening across multiple, completely different types of agents, the conversation changes. It's no longer, does this work? It becomes, how does value flow through this system and who captures it when activity scales? That's the next thing we need to tear down. All right, now we talk about the fuel. And let's clear something up right away because this word scares people for no reason. Tokenomics is just a fancy way of saying how the fuel is made, how much of it exists, and how it gets used. If the tech is the engine, this is what makes the whole thing move. The token here is called virtual. The total supply is fixed at 1 billion tokens. That's it. No inflation, no emissions, no printing more fuel later. Everything that will ever exist already exists today. That matters because a lot of crypto systems quietly add more fuel over time. Virtuals does not. Now, just because the total supply is 1 billion doesn't mean all of it is sloshing around the market. This is where people get confused. A large portion of that supply is not freely circulating, and it's not unlocked all at once. Here's how it's actually structured. At launch, the majority of virtual was allocated to the community. This includes the original PathDAO holders, who were transitioned one-to-one into virtual. There was no big private sale dumping tokens later. No cliff unlock waiting to nuke the chart. There is also an ecosystem treasury, which holds a meaningful portion of the supply. But this is important. That treasury is not unlocked at once, and it's not meant to be dumped on the market. The protocol set clear limits on how much of the treasury can be released in a given year. Roughly speaking, only a small percentage of the treasury can be used annually, and only for things like incentives, liquidity, and development. So instead of massive unlock cliffs, you get slow, controlled releases. That's a big difference. Now let's talk about what actually reduces supply, because this is the part that makes the fuel loop interesting. Every time a new agent is created, virtual is required. That token doesn't just disappear into a team wallet. It gets locked into the system as liquidity. When an agent succeeds and graduates, War Virtual gets locked underneath it. So growth locks fuel. Then there's usage. When users pay agents for services, those payments happen in virtual. A portion of that activity flows back to the protocol, and part of that gets used for buybacks and burns. Burning means those tokens are permanently removed from supply. So while the total supply is fixed at 1 billion, the effective circulating supply can shrink over time if the system is actually being used. There's also staking and locking. Holders can lock virtual for governance and participation. Locked tokens aren't burned, but they're temporarily removed from circulation, which tightens supply while they're locked. Now let's talk about unlock risk, because that's what everyone really wants to know. There is no single giant unlock event hanging over this project. No VC cliff, no team unlock bomb, no wait until next quarter moment. The biggest potential source of new circulating tokens is the ecosystem treasury, and that release is rate limited and usage based. That means new fuel only enters the system if it's actually being used to grow the system. So here's the clean takeaway. Virtual has a fixed total supply, no inflation, no massive cliff unlocks, slow, controlled treasury releases, and multiple mechanisms that lock or burn fuel as usage increases. This token does not survive on hype. It survives on activity. If builders build, fuel gets locked. If users use, fuel gets burned. If activity slows, the system feels it immediately. That's not a bug. That's accountability. So when people ask, is the token just a speculative chip? The honest answer is no. It's the base fuel that every agent, every workflow, and every transaction depends on. And once you understand the supply, the unlocks, and the fuel loop, the final question becomes unavoidable. If this engine keeps running and usage scales, how big does this actually get? That's where we go next. Before we put this on the dyno and start throwing out big market cap numbers, we need to talk about the people, and in this case, the agents that are actually showing up. Because with virtuals, the community isn't just token holders sitting quietly in a wallet. The agents themselves are the community. And when you look at the numbers, this gets big fast. Start with Virtuals protocol itself. Across social platforms, Virtuals has built a core audience of roughly 280,000 followers. That's not a ghost following, and it's not a one-week spike. That's sustained attention around the platform, the tooling, and the idea of autonomous agents. Now layer the agents on top of that. Look at AIXBT. AIXBT alone has about 472,000 followers on X. That puts it in the top tier of crypto accounts. Period. Human or AI. And it posts daily, often multiple times a day, reacting to market moves, narratives, and on-chain signals. That kind of following doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't stay unless there's consistent value. That's a massive, active micro-community by itself. Then look at Colin. Colin is smaller, but important. She has around 21,000 followers, and she posts consistently, often daily. She frames herself as a swarm, meaning coordinated outputs, rather than a single personality stream. That matters because it shows the ecosystem isn't just about scale, it's about different operating models. Then you've got agents like Luna, who at peak pulled hundreds of thousands of followers across platforms, particularly during her music and influencer run. Different lane, same rails. Now zoom out and add this up. You don't have one community, one account, one voice. You have multiple large overlapping audiences, each anchored to an agent that actually does something. When you combine, there's 280K around the core protocol, 470K around AIXBT, 21K around Colin, plus Luna's historical reach and other smaller agents. you're looking at well over 500,000 engaged followers, distributed across different use cases, tones, and niches. That's not fragile. That's resilient, because this community doesn't collapse if one agent slows down. It doesn't die if one narrative cools. Different agents serve different audiences: traders, builders, creators, AI native users. Same infrastructure, same token, same economic rails. And that's why it makes sense to umbrella the agents under the community itself. They're not mascots. They're not marketing channels. They're active nodes, each pulling attention, users, and participation into the ecosystem. So when we ask, is anyone actually here? The answer is very clear. Yes. And they're not all here for the same reason. That's a real community. Now, with that context set, we can finally talk numbers without it feeling like hopium. All right, now we put it on the dyno. Lulu, take it away. All right, we are now at everyone's favorite part, the money. But before we talk numbers, we need to give credit where it belongs. All of the price scenarios you're about to hear come from Lulu, the head of technical analysis here in the garage. She is the queen of the charts. She lives in the data. And when it comes to price scenarios, she runs the dyno. Now let's set the table. As of right now, the total crypto market cap is about $3.13 trillion. That's today. Not peak bull, not fantasy. For this dyno run, we're going to assume a future $20 trillion total crypto market cap. That's not tomorrow. That's a full cycle assumption. One important thing to remember before we go any further: Virtuals has already been higher. Back in January of last year, Virtuals traded as high as $4.40 during the first AI agent hype cycle. The hype was real, but the infrastructure was still early. That run priced the idea. What we're looking at now is a system that actually exists. All right, starting from today's price of about 90 cents, here are the scenarios. If Virtual simply keeps its lane and grows with the market, Lulu's math points to a price range of about $4.50 to $6. That's your base case. If Virtuals gains just a little more relevance and captures more dominance as AI agents become real infrastructure, the price range moves closer to $10 to $14. That's a category win scenario. If everything goes right, AI agents go mainstream, autonomous workflows become normal, and Virtuals becomes a default place to build, the aggressive case lands around $22 to $30. That's the moonshot. And then there's the black swan: regulation, narrative collapse, or a better system replaces this one. In that case, Virtuals underperforms and capital is at risk. That downside is real. Now, before we close this out, we need to give the build a score. Based on the tech, the real usage, the tokenomics, and the community, Virtuals earns a dyno score of 7.3 out of 10 here in the garage. That puts it firmly in the category of tuned up and worth watching. Not finished, not risk-free, but real. And that's the important part. This is not financial advice. These are scenarios. We showed you the structure. We showed you the risks. We showed you the upside. And now you've got the full picture. If you've got a project you want us to put on the lift next, drop it in the comments. Like the video, follow the garage, share it with your fellow degens, and we'll see you next time. Engines hot, safety off.